After the release of Crash's N. Sane Trilogy, everyone started speculating when Spyro the Dragon would get his time in the spotlight. As it turns out, the Purple Dragon would get the remake treatment only 2 years after Spyro reignited, giving a new generation the chance to collect hordes of gems, fly through open-world levels, and defeat the villains plaguing the Dragon World. The Spyro series is lush with memorable NPCs, so in order to qualify for this list, the characters either have to be playable or appear in multiple cutscenes within the games. So if you were hoping the Fracture Hills Alchemist would be the most evil, you're out of luck. The first 5 console games are considered the same canon, so those are the ones we'll be looking at. We'll also be counting the alternate continuity from The Legend of Spyro. However, if a character's appearances overlap into both timelines, we'll only count their original appearance to prevent confusion. However, we won't be counting anything from the GBA games or Skylanders, because that would make this list longer than a Crash 4 completion run. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get on to the list. Hey guys, I'm Brad with One Up Binge, and this is Spyro the Dragon, Good to Evil. As usual, we'll be starting with the purest character and working our way down. These characters are the good. The gold medal of good is going to the golden dragonfly, Sparx. He's been by Spyro's side since the very beginning, acting as a health bar in gameplay. He tanks the hits for Spyro in levels and during boss fights, as long as he maintains a healthy diet of butterflies. In Year of the Dragon and A Hero's Tale, Sparx joins the fight directly in his own shooter levels, which kind of begs the question why he doesn't do this in Spyro's levels, but we don't have time to talk about that. He doesn't have much of a personality to judge, but based on his in-game appearances, he's just as brave and heroic as Spyro. Flying into second place is the Purple Dragon himself, Spyro. It's easy to see why he's placed so high when you realize how useless almost every other character is in the first few games. Every one of the adult dragons is crystallized in the first game, and Spyro has to save the entire species. In Ripto's Rage, he basically has to unconquer all of Avalar. He gets some assistance in Spyro 3 and A Hero's Tale, but he still has to handle all the bosses, travel through all the levels, and rescue most of the eggs himself. To put it lightly, Spyro does everything in the series almost single-handedly. Personality-wise, Spyro is fearless, which is certainly a good quality to have when facing down threats who are much bigger and badder than he is. However, Spyro can be cocky, but it usually doesn't hurt him too much, with the notable exception of his encounter with the woolly mammoth.
I've beaten bigger baddies than you.
Spyro initially tries to shrug off the responsibility of helping other people until he's forced to, but he makes up for it with the effort he puts into saving the day. He's still a young dragon, so we can't expect him to be perfect, but he wouldn't be the hero of the story if he didn't save the day each time. In third place, we have the Dragon Guardians from the Legend Saga, which includes Ignitus, Volteer, Cyril, and Terrador. And we'll go ahead and throw the Chronicler in there too. Before the events of A New Beginning, the 4 Guardians were charged with protecting the temple and the dragon eggs from the Dark Master. Unfortunately, the temple was ransacked by the apes. With Spyro's egg being the only survivor, Ignitus sends the egg away and is still waiting at the temple when Spyro returns.
May the ancestors look after you.
Once they're all rescued, Ignitus and the other Guardians train Spyro in the ways of elemental breath in preparation to defeat Cinder. Spyro is nearly caught while rescuing Terrador, and Ignitus attacks Cinder head-on to give Spyro a chance to escape. In the Eternal Night, Spyro meets the Chronicler, who tells him about both his past and his future. Despite knowing the outcome of Spyro's actions, he allows Spyro to choose his own path and rescue Cinder from the apes. The Guardians have a bigger role in Dawn of the Dragon, actively participating in battles against the Dark Master's forces and protecting the city of Warfang. During the final confrontation with Malfor, Ignitus sacrifices himself in the Belt of Fire to give Spyro and Cinder the chance to take him down. The Guardians' personalities sometimes clash, and they often bigger over what course of action to take, but they all believe in their cause and in Spyro, and they're dedicated to protecting the world from evil forces.
Now is the time to face your fear.
Next is Allura the Fawn. Her role in Avalar is never really defined. She seems to be some type of leader, given her knowledge of all the different worlds, but she doesn't claim any title and she doesn't live in any of the castles. Regardless, Allura, along with Hunter, has the idea to bring in a dragon to help defeat Ripto, which kicks off the events of the second game.
A dragon is our only chance of stopping Ripto.
She doesn't really give him a choice, but she provides Spyro with a guidebook to help him along his journey, unlocks key areas for him once he has enough collectibles, and even begins to fall for Spyro by the end. Allura tends to Avalar in any way she can and puts her responsibility to the realm above anything else. Very noble and worthy of the Bronze Medal of Good. Next up is going to be Sheila the Kangaroo. She's the guardian of her Alp and the billy goats who live in the mountains. The sorceress imprisons all the animal companions before Spyro gets to the Forgotten Worlds and frees them. And Sheila is the first one to get her payback against the Rhinox. She destroys their fortress in Seashell Shore, rescues 2 captive eggs in one of the most infuriating missions ever, and helps Spyro defeat Buzz. Sheila is protective of her home and her friends, and she greets danger with a smirk and a double kick, earning her a high spot in the good tier. Bentley the Yeti is next. Bentley is a walking, club-bashing encyclopedia who tries to set a good example for his little brother, Bartholomew, if you consider a good example to be boxing other Yetis and playing whack-a-mole with magicians. Bentley joins in Spyro's quest to rescue the Dragon Eggs after he's freed from imprisonment, and his notable achievements include taking back his home from a horde of Rhinox, scaling a giant enemy fortress in Bamboo Terrace, and helping Spyro take on Scorch.
This might be our last stand, Spyro.
He also makes a cameo appearance in A Hero's Tale, where his house gets taken over by other Yetis, and he's apparently too scared to do anything about it. What's with the sudden nerf? Next up, we have Sergeant Byrd, James Byrd.
Awaiting orders, sir.
The Sergeant is the leader of the Hummingbird Resistance against the Sorceress. He has to single-handedly take back his military base and rescue all of his soldiers after being freed by Spyro, and proceeds to help Spyro fight Spike. All that is admirable, but Sergeant Byrd also tends to venture into other worlds for a vacation while they're in the middle of a war. In fairness, he helps rescue some eggs along the way, but sneaking off to see his girlfriend in Charmed Ridge while on duty? Is that like a violation? He also appears in A Hero's Tale to tackle the Speedway sections, but his impact in that game is less than that of Ur the Dragon. Still, Byrd is one of the very few characters who's playable in more than one game, so that definitely counts for something. Next are the secret agent twins, Handel and Greta. They're first seen infiltrating Scorch and Ripto's Rage, up until Handel falls for a lollipop trap and gets captured. After Spyro saves them and their mission, the twins continue their takeover of the palace by activating their Wonder Twin powers to defeat all the guards. In Ur the Dragon, they appear again to destroy the Sorceress's fireworks factory, and also to reference the Doom and Matrix series. They like to insult each other behind each other's backs, but that's normal sibling behavior. It's never mentioned where they got their training, but I think their work technically makes them child soldiers. I hope their parents know what they're doing. Then again, that would mean they're okay sending their kids to battle. I don't want to know the rest of this. Moving on, we have Zoe the Fairy. In a meta context, she serves as a means of saving the game, but within the story, she does more than you might have noticed. She helps hide the orbs from Ripto when he first arrives, she zaps him when he threatens the others, and she discovers that the sorceress stole the dragon eggs. Even though she doesn't directly fight, she's still helpful to Spyro in his quest against evil. Ending the good tier is our first Hero's Tale exclusive character, Blink. Blink is the professor's nephew who joins in the fight against Red. He has a deathly fear of being above the surface, so all of his levels take place underground and require the player to destroy the dark shards placed by Red. Other than that, he doesn't do a lot in the grand scheme of things, but he also doesn't have any personality flaws that are worth docking him any points either. With that said, we move from the good characters down to the more questionable characters. This is the gray area. Starting off the gray area is Hunter the Cheetah. This one is going to raise some eyebrows, considering Hunter not only acts as a tutorial for new players, but also fights by Spyro's side in all of his appearances and is playable in multiple games. My main problem with Hunter comes with how he uses collectibles. Like in the second and third games, Hunter will only offer Spyro items like orbs and eggs, the stuff he needs to progress through the game, after Spyro has beaten him at some sort of challenge like catching crystal popcorn or extreme skateboarding. Bro, this isn't Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Come on, let's get going.
Well, there's no shame in losing to the master.
Hunter accidentally brings Ripto to Avalar by messing with the portal with no idea how it works, but this was obviously not intentional. Hunter gets much cockier in his later appearances, but it's mostly in playful banter with Spyro. Although he can be a coward when it comes to things like going near water, Hunter's not afraid to help his friends and take on hordes of enemies with his bow and arrow, like when he travels through an entire glacier to rescue Spyro in A Hero's Tale. He also rescues Bianca when Spyro wants to let her get eaten, which is definitely noble, even if it's only because he has a crush on her. Hunter is far from bad, but he could take things more seriously. Next up is the Professor. The Professor is a genius, with plenty of useful inventions under his belt. He manages to intercept Spyro on his way to Dragon Shores to help kick Ripto out of Avalar, and he returns in the next game to help train Agent 9. Despite being on the side of good in each game, he runs into the same pitfall as Hunter, in that he withholds orbs from Spyro until he completes a challenge or helps him with the task. He can also be reckless with his experiments, like when he releases an evil spirit in Colossus that Spyro has to catch. However, it's all for a purpose. The Professor uses those collectibles to create new abilities, like the orb power-ups he uses against Ripto. He also takes a more active role in the fight against Red, even attempting to take him on. Of course, that was stupid, and he gets captured immediately and put to work upgrading Red's robot army. During the actual boss fight, the Professor accidentally turns Red into a 50-foot mechanical monster.
Hold on, I'll finish him off.
And that's just fantastic. He's smarter and more responsible than this, so even though he's in the gray area, he's still helpful in the fight against evil. Moving on, we have the trigger-happy primate, Agent 9. Agent 9 is one of the Professor's most impressive accomplishments, a well-oiled Rhinoc-killing machine. But there's something off about him. Like, there's nothing wrong with being efficient, but this guy gets way too much enjoyment out of shooting his laser at things. At least he's aiming in the right direction, whether it be at gangs of dinosaur bandits, the horrors of Haunted Tomb, or his favorite, enemy Rhinocs. Rounding out the gray area, we have two redeemed villains. First up is Bianca. She's first seen in the opening of Spyro 3, kidnapping all the dragon eggs and escaping to the Forgotten Realms. After presenting all the eggs to the sorceress, she has to deal with Spyro and Hunter trying to recover them all. She makes several attempts to stop them, but since she's still a novice with magic, her spells are usually unsuccessful. After hearing what the sorceress actually plans to do with the eggs, and falling in love with Hunter, she jumps ship to help Spyro defeat her former mistress.
All this time you've only wanted them for their wings?
Bianca is certainly a welcome addition to the team, and I'm sure there's some people questioning why she's so far down. Remember that the morality for this list is relative, and just because she's this low doesn't mean she's a bad person or anywhere near the level of anyone in the next tier. And the other villain turncoat we have is Cinder. In her first appearance, she's about as sinister and destructive as possible. She had been raised by the Dark Master to be his instrument of devastation, and she was quite successful at it. By the events of the first game, she captures all the Dragon Guardians to drain their energy into crystals that she plans to use to reawaken her master.
This is where it really ends.
Spyro is able to defeat her before this happens, but the plot is already set in motion. Cinder doesn't feel welcome at the Dragon Temple, despite Sparks being the only person who dislikes her, and decides to run away. She's quickly captured, then rescued by Spyro, then captured again, then rescued again. During the second time, Cinder brings Spyro back to the light before he completely succumbs to his dark side, and Spyro uses his power to encapsulate Cinder, Sparks, and himself until the next game. When they wake up, the two of them are magically bonded together for the entire adventure. Once they finally confront Malfor, he makes Cinder question whether or not she intentionally released him before corrupting her again and forcing her to fight Spyro. Spyro is able to bring her back, and the two defeat the Dark Master before his plan is completed. The reason that Cinder is the lowest of the neutral tier is because, while she was certainly manipulated by Malfor, it's unclear whether or not she was acting of her own volition when she was his enforcer. The amount of destruction she caused is far too great to ignore, but at least we can be certain that she's free of Malfor's grip and fights for good now. That concludes the gray area. Now we move on to the truly despicable and evil characters. This is the bad and the evil. First up in the bad category is Moneybags. Oh yeah, you knew this one was coming. The original paywall. Moneybags is a greedy businessman who blocks off areas of the game, but he's willing to let Spyro pass for, a small fee.
I'll let you cross the bridge when you have more gems.
Look, there's nothing wrong with a bit of free enterprise, but there's no way this can be legal when he's shutting down public bridges and portals to worlds that he doesn't even own. He even sells weapons to Ripto and works directly with the sorceress to keep the animal fighters locked up in the second and third games. Moneybags is less of a jerk in A Hero's Tale, but most of his prices are still complete rip-offs. Taking back all the gems by beating the crap out of him in Midnight Mountain will forever be one of the most satisfying moments in all of gaming. Ripto's lackeys, Crush and Gulp, are up next. These two lumbering beasts don't possess much intelligence, as seen when Crush can't figure out how to walk through a portal, and when Gulp accidentally eats Ripto's scepter. They follow Ripto's orders without question, but with varying levels of success, because they're dumb.
Destroy him!
It's difficult to call them evil, considering they don't act of their own accord, but they're still dangerous monsters who are willing to stomp, smash, roast, and or eat Ripto's enemies, so down to the bad tier they go. Just above his minions is Ripto. It sort of feels wrong for the most iconic villain not to place in the top 5. Don't get me wrong, I love the character, but if we're judging objectively, Ripto accomplishes the least of all the main villains. He allegedly takes over all the homeworlds of Avalar, but besides changing the flags outside of the castle and kicking Moneybags off a cliff, we don't really see the effects of his rule.
We finally made Avalar ours.
We know he's tyrannical and likes to blow things up with his scepter, but Spyro eventually dunks him into lava, and it seems like Avalar barely changes, because all the individual worlds were dealing with their own problems before Ripto even arrived. Inexplicably, he returns and enters the Dragonfly with an actual army of Riptocs, and he attempts to take over the realms again by using the magic from the baby dragonflies. But I don't like to talk about that game, so I'll just end this entry by saying that while Ripto is evil, he needs to step up his game if he wants to compete with our next few entries. Next up is Spyro's first ever bad guy, Gnasty Gnorc. After he's brutally roasted on TV by the dragons, he casts a spell that immediately encases every single adult dragon in crystal, forcing Spyro to begin his quest to free them. Look, I'd be pretty mad if I got called out on live TV, but I'm just gonna be mad at the one guy. I'm not gonna take it out on everyone. It's kinda overkill.
He is ugly.
Ugly?
Unlike Ripto, we actually see the effects of Gnasty's takeover, as his minions infest every one of the dragon worlds as soon as they're all crystallized. After the opening, he isn't seen again until the end of the game, and while his boss fight is pretty underwhelming, Spyro is rewarded with access to Gnasty's loot for 100% completion, which makes the whole thing worth it. He returns as the first boss in A Hero's Tale, where he once again puts his arrogance and bad temper on full display, but he's defeated rather easily by Spyro, if only his spell hadn't missed that one little purple dragon. Next is the fallen dragon, Red. He was once a wise and beloved dragon elder, but eventually he became too power-hungry for his own good and tried to overthrow the Order. After he was cast out, he sought ways to take over all the realms, which would come in the form of dark gems. Red enlists the help of the Gnorcs and plants these life-draining gems across the lands, corrupting the locals and destroying the wildlife. When he hears the news of Spyro interrupting his plans, he executes the messenger twice, showing his cruelty and malice. Spyro gives him a wake-up call after beating him the first time, but Red soon captures the professor and forces him to create a robot army to replace the incompetent Gnorcs. For round 2, Red turns into a dragon Megazord, but still can't handle Spyro, who's a fraction of his size. Red is a cruel and power-hungry villain who practically took over the world in a matter of hours. And yes, I'm aware of his backstory from Spyro Shadow Legacy, but as previously mentioned, those don't count, so no redemption for him. In third place is going to be Gaul the Ape King. Before Cinder entered the fold, Gaul was Malfor's most feared servant. He led the night raid on the Dragon Temple, in which all the dragon eggs were smashed, except for Spyro's and Cinder's. Gaul's also responsible for kidnapping Cinder and bringing her to Malfor to be corrupted and used for evil. As leader of the apes, he's also commander of the ground troops in the first and second games. He acts as the main antagonist of the Eternal Night, but is barely a presence until the end of the game as the final boss. However, he's been working behind the scenes to resurrect Malfor because he thinks the Dark Master will bring about a new age of power for the apes. Unfortunately for him, Malfor has nothing of the sort in mind, but we'll get to that in a minute. The silver medal of evil is the Sorceress from Spyro 3. Like the other villains, she is a prolific magic user with an army at her disposal, a lust for power, and a hatred for dragons. What sets her apart from the others is her perverse plan. She wants to kidnap all the baby dragons to cut off their wings and use them for an immortality spell.
Smear them and smush them and crack them and crease them!
The way she talks about destroying them is so disturbing that it forces Bianca to leave her for good. By the way, the sorceress manipulates and abuses her all the time. She also transforms her loyal soldiers into grotesque giant monsters who serve as boss fights. Spyro eventually makes his way to the sorceress's lair and defeats her, but she doesn't actually die. I mean, what is with these villains and surviving lava? Regardless, once the player has collected every item in the game, the second boss fight is unlocked. Apparently, this lava bath does kill her. All the eggs are recovered, and the day is saved. The sorceress is a dragon's worst nightmare, so it's only fitting that Spyro gets to take her down. Good riddance. It's not even a competition for the top spot. The gold medal of evil goes to Malfor. As a rare purple dragon, Malfor was born with extraordinary abilities that he learned to harness from a very young age. It wasn't long before he became one of the most powerful dragons that ever lived, and he knew it too. Fearing his uncontrollable power, the elders exiled him, which is always a fantastic idea. What could possibly go wrong? From the darkness of the Well of Souls, Malfor created his evil army to wage war against the other dragons, all the while putting his true plan into motion. Malfor believes that, as a purple dragon, it's his destiny to reawaken a creature called the Destroyer, to bring about the apocalypse so that the world can be remade with the purple dragons as the overlords. Well, that's not cool with all the other living beings on the planet, so Spyro and Cinder are sent to stop him, and thankfully they do. The Dark Master is cunning and manipulative, using each and every one of his servants for his own goals and completely disregarding their well-being. He cares only for himself and furthering his own power, and doesn't care that the cost of his plan is literally the entire world. It doesn't get any worse than this in a Spyro game. Alright, but let us know what you think. Which Spyro character is truly the most evil? And if you need a one-up, don't forget to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite games. Thanks for watching.